This happened in November of 2022, when I was still doing Uber part-time to make extra money during the holidays. I was picking up extra shifts whenever I could, and this particular Tuesday night had been slow. I was driving through a quiet suburb just outside Columbus, the kind of place with dark intersections and rows of shuttered storefronts once the sun goes down. It was around 12:45 a.m., and I had just dropped someone off at a 24-hour grocery store on the edge of town. I was getting ready to call it a night when I got a new ride request. The name said Mel, and the pickup location was listed as 5 minutes away, near an industrial park I'd been near once or twice. Now, this area wasn't a place I ever felt super comfortable driving through at night. It's mostly warehouses, storage units, and a couple of truck depots. The kind of place where the only light comes from flickering street lamps and motion sensors above loading docks. At that hour, the entire block was dead silent. The pin was oddly placed too, not near an entrance or building, but somewhere between two large structures toward the very back of a long, cracked asphalt lot. I figured maybe it was a late shift worker, or someone's phone just dropped the pin weirdly. It happens all the time, so I didn't think too much of it. As I pulled in, the air felt heavier, like the silence was pressing down. I slowed to a crawl, scanning the area, and that's when I saw her. A woman was standing alone, just off to the side of one of the buildings near a chain-link fence that bordered the property. She was backlit by a dim orange floodlight behind her, making it hard to see her features clearly. But she looked to be in her mid-30s, long dark hair falling over the hood of her heavy jacket. She had a large purse slung tightly over one shoulder and was wearing gloves, even though it wasn't freezing out. She didn't move when I approached. She didn't wave or step forward. She just stood there like she'd been waiting for hours. I slowed to a stop about 10 feet away and rolled down the passenger window, leaning over to ask, "You Mel?" She didn't answer right away. She just stared at me, head tilted slightly, like she was studying my face, or maybe looking through me. Then she nodded once and started walking toward the car. Her steps were slow and deliberate. Not tired exactly, just quiet. She opened the rear door and got in without saying a word. The door shut with a soft thud, and I glanced at her, sir. In the mirror, she was sitting straight up, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed forward. She didn't buckle her seatbelt or pull out a phone, just stared ahead, as if she'd been riding with me the entire time. Something about the whole thing felt strange. Not necessarily dangerous, just wrong. Like the scene didn't quite add up. But I tried to shake it off. I confirmed the destination in the app and asked if it looked right. She finally spoke. Her voice was soft, almost too soft. "Yeah, that's fine." I pulled out of the lot, but my gut was already telling me this wasn't going to be a normal ride. As soon as she sat down, something felt wrong. Not immediately threatening, but just off, like a quiet static in the air. Her movements were stiff, controlled, like she was trying too hard to seem normal. She didn't meet my eyes, not even a glance in the mirror. Just stared down at the center console like something was written there that only she could see. I said her name again just to make sure, and she didn't respond right away. After a second or two, she whispered, "Yeah." Barely audible, like it took effort to push the word out of her throat. I confirmed the address. It was a residential street about 20 minutes away. She didn't say anything else, so I started driving. For the first 10 minutes, it was silent. No music, no conversation, just the soft hum of the tires and the occasional rattle from something loose in my glove box. It was the kind of silence that starts to feel heavy, like it's pressing against your ears. I tried to ease the tension by asking if she worked nearby. She said no, in that same soft voice, but offered nothing more. Not even a fake chuckle or a polite, "How about you?" Just silence. Every couple of minutes, I noticed she was adjusting her purse. Not opening it, not pulling anything out, just shifting it, repositioning it in her lap. Her fingers would dip inside briefly, then go still, like she was checking for something over and over again, like making sure it was still there, whatever it was. I couldn't help but glance back at her in the mirror. Her eyes were wide, but not in a scared way, more like someone trying not to blink, trying not to be noticed. She looked alert, but distant, like her body was in the car, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. We kept driving, deeper into a part of town I didn't know that well. The houses got farther apart, the streetlights more sporadic. And just when I thought we were on the final stretch, she said softly, "Take a left here." The GPS said to keep going straight. I hesitated for a second, but figured maybe she knew a faster route. Sometimes locals do. So I turned left. The road narrowed and dipped slightly, leading us past some overgrown lots and what looked like the remains of a burned-out barn. Then she said, "Now turn right." Again, not a request, more like an instruction. I followed it out of instinct, not logic. And the second I turned, I felt it. Everything around us seemed darker. The trees leaned over the road like they were listening. The houses, if there were any at all, were hidden behind thick brush and shadows. I checked the GPS and noticed it had stopped rerouting. It was just spinning, like it couldn't find us. I finally asked, "Hey, is this still the right way?" And she said without hesitation, "Just keep going." Her tone was flatter now, almost lifeless. And that was the first time I felt a chill crawl up the back of my neck. I gripped the wheel tighter. A minute later, the trees opened up, and I saw it ahead of us. A cemetery. Not a big one either. It was old. The kind with rusted iron fencing and leaning headstones, half of them swallowed by grass. There were no lights, just the faint glint of the moon off marble and stone. She pointed toward the front gate and said, "Stop here." I didn't want to, but my hand was already moving to put the car in park. I looked back at her, and she had one hand on her purse, one foot already halfway out the door. She stepped out slowly, but before she shut the door, she paused, leaned her head just slightly back in, and said something that made my stomach drop. "You should go now, before he sees you." She didn't explain, didn't even wait for a response. She shut the door gently and walked toward the cemetery gates, disappearing into the shadows between two headstones like she'd done it before. I sat there frozen for maybe 3 seconds. Then I put the car in reverse and got out of there as fast as I could. The road felt tighter on the way back, like the darkness had folded in behind us, swallowing the path. When I got home, I checked the trip, just out of curiosity, mostly because I couldn't stop thinking about what she said. But when I opened the app, the drop-off address had changed. It now said, "Location unavailable." And the rider profile that said Mel earlier was just gone. No name, no picture, no history. It was like the ride had never happened. But I remember her. I remember what she said. And I still don't know who he was.
This happened in early 2021, when rideshare gigs were just starting to rebound after all the lockdowns. People were getting out again. The streets were alive at night, and I was back to my usual routine. I'd found that working late, between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m., brought in better money, fewer drivers, less traffic, and sometimes more interesting passengers. But not always in a good way. This one night, it was just after 1:45 a.m., and I was about ready to call it quits when I got one last ping. The name said James. Pickup location, a 24-hour gas station in a part of town that most people avoid after dark. Still, I accepted it. It wasn't the worst neighborhood, just known for weird vibes. I pulled into the station and didn't see anyone near the pumps, but then I spotted a figure leaning against the side of the building under one of those dim, flickering lights. He was wearing all black. Hoodie pulled up so low, I couldn't even make out his eyes. Head tilted downward like he was studying the concrete. I rolled the window down halfway and asked, "You James?" He nodded once, no words, no smile. Just opened the back door and slid into the seat behind me without another sound. I confirmed the address on the app and started driving. At first, I didn't think much of it. Some people like their rides quiet, I get it. But after 10 minutes of complete silence, not even the sound of him shifting in the seat, I started to feel it. The kind of tension you don't notice at first, until it's already coiled around your chest. I tried to make small talk, asked him if he was heading home from work. No reply, just silence. I glanced in the rearview mirror, and that's when I saw he was holding something in his lap. A small black box. Nothing flashy, no logos, just a plain square container about the size of a lunchbox, maybe a little thicker. He wasn't opening it or fiddling with it, just holding it with both hands, resting it gently like it was something fragile or important. Maybe both. And he was staring straight ahead, eyes locked on the back of the passenger seat, like he was trying to burn a hole through it with his mind. I didn't ask about the box at first. I just kept driving, trying to shake the feeling that I'd made a mistake picking him up at all. Then out of nowhere he said, "Do you ever wonder if you picked up the wrong person?" His voice was low, almost thoughtful, like he wasn't really talking to me, more like he was narrating a thought to himself. I let out this nervous chuckle, the kind you do when you don't know what else to do, and said, Sometimes, yeah." He didn't say another word, didn't laugh, didn't even blink, just kept holding that box and staring straight ahead. And the air in the car changed. It felt thicker, like the windows had fogged over and I hadn't noticed. My hands gripped the steering wheel harder without me meaning to, like my body knew something I didn't. I finally asked, "Hey, are you okay?" He didn't respond right away, but after a few seconds he said, in the same calm, flat tone, "Not yet, but soon." Then he turned his head just slightly, not to look at me, but toward the window, like he was watching for something out there. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just driving someone home. I was part of something I didn't understand, and maybe wasn't supposed to. We were deep into the drive by now, cutting through one of those long, rural back roads, the kind surrounded on both sides by dense forest. No lights, no houses, no signs of life. Just trees and shadows. The kind of dark that swallows your headlights after a few feet, like the road itself doesn't want to be found. I hadn't heard a word from him since that last sentence. Not yet, but soon. His voice kept echoing in my head with every mile we drove. Then out of nowhere he said, "Pull over right here." His tone was calm, but it didn't feel like a suggestion. I glanced around the road. Didn't see any landmarks, no driveway, no gate, just more woods. "Are you sure?" I asked, half hoping he'd say no. He nodded. "Yeah, this is it." I slowed the car and eased it to the shoulder. As soon as we stopped, he opened the door like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. But before he stepped out, he did something that made every hair on the back of my neck stand up. He placed the black box gently on the back seat and said, "Don't open it, not until I'm gone." And then he stepped out of the car and walked straight into the forest without looking back. No flashlight, no trail. Just disappeared into the trees like the woods had been waiting for him. I sat there in silence, for a minute, maybe more. The car engine hummed softly, but everything else was dead quiet. No wind, no insects, nothing. Just me in that box, sitting there like a question I didn't want the answer to. I stared at it, unsure what to do. frozen by the weight of whatever it was, or whatever it meant. Finally, I reached into the glove box, grabbed a napkin, and leaned into the back seat without touching it directly. I slid the box onto the napkin, then opened the door and carefully pushed it out onto the side of the road, like it might go off if I handled it wrong. I didn't care what was inside, I just didn't want it in my car anymore. I drove off without looking back, and never took another ride that night. But here's the part that still messes with me. 2 days later, I got a notification from the rideshare app. "How was your ride with James?" I stared at my screen, confused. I never ended the trip. I never rated him. But that wasn't the weird part. What got me was the timestamp. It said the ride ended at 3:17 a.m. I had dropped him off well before 2. I opened the trip details and scrolled down. My heart nearly stopped. Under drop-off location, it didn't list a forest road. It said, Home, 41 East Garland Street. A real address, in the middle of the city. Out of morbid curiosity, I looked it up on Google Maps. It was an old apartment building, boarded up, condemned after a fire in 1998. I even drove by later that week, during the day. It was real, but the windows were blackened, the walls scorched, and the entire building looked abandoned, like no one had been there in decades. I thought that was the end of it, until last night. Around 2:30 a.m., I got another ping. Same gas station, same name, James. And this time, the request came with a note. I left something behind.